Hi, I'm Mark Reed. Follow me as I attempt to put my new book, Impact Culture, into practice and discuss it with others taking a similar journey. You'll get tips that will help you achieve more impact from your research and stay healthy, no matter how busy you are. Rediscover your purpose. Lead from behind to empower those around you. Transform your work culture. Welcome to Season 4 of the Fast Track Impact Podcast. Okay, welcome. This week we are going to be discussing coaching, and I am joined by my wonderful wife, Joyce. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Mark. It's great to be back.
Excellent. So looking forward to diving into some of your own professional practice and experience. In the intervening period, you've been working with lots of clients, academics and non-academics. You've been doing some group coaching as well. And I want to get a sense today about the kind of benefits that researchers can get from coaching, the kind of results that you've seen some of your clients get from that, and how we can access the superpowers that you can get through coaching. Now, this is something that I wrote about in the Impact Culture book. I've recently published a blog on this. I'll put this in the show notes. This was in Times Higher Education. And as part of that, I looked at some of the evidence around what works, in fact, from a book called What Works in Executive Coaching by Eric DeHaan. I'll put a link to that into the show notes as well. And he looked at 35 randomized control trials. And looking at those, he found that all but 3 showed significant advantages for the coached experimental groups versus the control groups. And there are some incredible superpowers that you can get from this. So improved professional skills, knowledge and confidence, improved ratings of their effectiveness by their managers, greater self-belief, goal attainment and job satisfaction, improved resilience, workplace well-being and career satisfaction, improved health and life satisfaction, and, crucially, less depression, stress and burnout. And for me, this is one of the reasons why this, as a practice, needs to become more central to our impact cultures. Because if we want our cultures to become more compassionate, and let's remember compassion is empathy plus action, then we should be keying into where our colleagues are at and helping in a much more proactive way rather than just picking up the pieces after people have burned out. And I would argue surely this must also be more cost effective in the long run as well, although it might seem to be more expensive to invest in this up front. Now, if you're listening from an institutional perspective, one of the messages here is to reconsider that mentoring program that you've got and ask whether this could become a coaching program. So the work that me and Joyce did recently for a university that was reviewing its mentoring provision showed that a lot of the colleagues approached their mentors with real fear and trepidation, a sense of judgment. And there is always this sense that it has to be a senior colleague who does this, which instantly gives you a problem of numbers. We don't have enough senior colleagues. And there's an instant power dynamic in there, which can be useful, can be helpful when you've got someone who can give you some really helpful pointers. But very often it can be quite judgmental and quite a challenging space for people. Not the kind of place where they can explore issues and get the kind of self-directed help and empowerment that often is what we need and the kind of stuff that you can get through coaching. And so transforming from a coaching program what do you call it? A mentoring program. Thank you, Joyce. To a coaching program is one way of instantly changing up your empowerment, your culture, enabling people to do more and better work and creating a more compassionate culture. But if you're listening from an individual perspective and saying, well, great, but that doesn't exist, at least yet, in my university, and you want to access this stuff, then there are lots of different kinds of coaches that you can find. So I wonder, what are the kind of things that researchers come to you with, Joyce? What are the different kinds of coaches that you can access, that you can choose from? Tell us a bit more about the kind of practice that you do, because there's plenty of people other than just you out there that can help people in this space.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Absolutely. Coaching is a rapidly expanding field at the moment. I think because the research is now coming through to show the benefits of coaching programs within lots of different spaces. However, I think if you go a little bit deeper in terms of what the coaching relationship provides, actually, a coach of any type can be beneficial. However, kind of in broad categories, you can have executive coaches working within business or within sort of executive fields. You can have health coaches like myself working within the arena of health and wellness, work-life balance, stress management. You can have life coaches who would take a really broad brush approach and help you just kind of really get those life goals in order. But really, I think we are basically all working as coaches to provide a safe environment, a safe relationship where people can explore their own barriers, their own goals, and actually start to make their own progress. And without being advised or told what to do, coaching should be very much tailored to the individual person with their own circumstances. Because actually, if you look at what a good coaching relationship should be, if you look at the coachee as being the driver and the coach being the vehicle, actually the coachee is always in control of that process and journey, and the coach's own personal views about what this person should perhaps be doing, they should really be kept out of it, because the whole coaching program or coaching relationship is about empowering the coachee to set up the goals that they would like to achieve in life and actually find the barriers that they struggle most with, and the coach just provides that support for them to be removing those as they go along. So you were asking me, Mark, about some of the things that I have maybe supported academics with, and perhaps it's slightly off-putting for people to see me as a health coach, but what I would actually say is that I'm a health and wellness coach working on resilience around work-life balance. That tends to be where the majority of my work lies. Obviously, with the background of me being a medical doctor, I've got a lot of knowledge in health, but that does not stop me from helping people with other things, work goals, family-related goals, life goals. I mean, really, the kind of process is similar. Because I'm not giving advice unless I'm asked for it, and I'm providing a safe space for people to explore their own challenges, desires, values, fears, joys, all of those things can come out within a coaching relationship, then actually it's much more holistic than just saying, I am a health coach. Actually, if you look at life as a whole, and I'm doing this more and more with the clients and also in my own personal journey in life as well, is that actually our lives sing to one holistic song sheet, and actually a good coach should be supporting somebody to see all of those key areas in life that they would like to prioritise and bring into balance. So for researchers in particular, this looks very much like work-life balance, work-home balance. It looks like stress, how to manage that, workload, how to manage that, and really keying into people's underlying values and belief systems and what drives them to do the work that they do. And folk are really finding that they reconnect with those values during a coaching relationship that we might have, and they're finding that they can say no more easily to things that don't actually resonate with them, without judging them, without judging those things that they don't particularly want to say yes to anymore. It's just realising that that doesn't actually resonate with them, and that they don't perhaps have to do everything that is available and possible. I think it's really difficult for academia in general, that there are so many opportunities, so many different projects you could work on. There are things that perhaps your department or your managers want you to work on, but actually that doesn't mean you have to do it. There's an awful lot of scope, and although that's a positive, I think it actually brings real challenge for researchers and academics, because it means if you don't tend to self-care very easily, you can get very overwhelmed with all of these choices and then feel really demotivated because it's really difficult to actually keep up with all of those choices that you've made. So that's where coaching can really help with work-life balance. Values-based prioritisation really comes through. And then also health and well-being as well. I mean, because we are whole humans, I've found that in order to help people manage their stress and their workload, we've worked with areas such as sleep, such as rest, such as getting more movement into people's day, good nutrition, in order to actually fuel that brain that is so important in academia. I mean, I could go on and on about this because it is such exciting work. And I think I would really back your point about the book, What Works in Coaching. That's a great wee book, and it's really densely packed with evidence about why coaching is incredibly powerful. I think perhaps now more than ever before, we are realising how work-life balance, work-home balance has become really quite out of kilter. And people more and more are looking for ways of bringing that in. And coaching can be a very safe and effective tool that departments and individuals can employ in order to get that real spark back to their research, to their home life, that skip in the step, if you like, of really enjoying that work, finding your motivation, finding your kind of curiosity comes back. And those are the types of things that my clients have said have worked for them.
Yeah, so I regularly hear people who are just on the brink of burnout, and the generic response is to externalize that problem. It's the system, and if it's not the system, it's their boss, their line manager, their university, or something a little bit closer to home, or it's the workload model or whatever it is, and you look at some of these people and they list all the different responsibilities that they've got, all the different pressures on their time, and it just does look completely inhuman. And I guess you've got people coming to you in that kind of situation where it does not add up. I can't also then be a husband and a father and all these other things. I'm just at breaking point. What on earth do I do? And essentially your answer is you have to learn how to drop things, which is an obvious answer, but you must really get pushback from people who say, but that's the whole problem. I need someone to take stuff off my plate. It's up to someone else to take these things away from me. And so I was discussing this with Johan Fazy, co-author of the Impact Culture book, a few weeks ago, and he was saying we need to try and get this 4-day week thing going, and maybe that's the answer. We need to do this from the top down. If more managers could say, let's move to a 4-day week. And I was like, yeah, I'm totally up for that, but what do you think the chances are that people would actually take a 4-day week? These are academics we're talking about. Everyone's going to say, yes, I get my Friday to catch up on everything I didn't do during the rest of the week. And we would still probably work just as much because we don't give ourselves permission to actually drop things or work less. And that must grate with some people, surely, when they come through your door and you're saying, actually, you need to stop externalizing. It's not up to anyone else to make this stuff happen. You're the one who needs to do it. How do you help people overcome that barrier?
That's a really good question, and I think the first thing I would say to you there, Mark, is that I would never tell a client to stop doing anything, because remember, this is coaching and this is about them. And usually the client is aware that their work-life balance is completely out of kilter and they need to do something. And the coaching relationship is about very gently unpicking that. And they know the answers are within the person, but they need that space and time to actually be heard, first of all, and then to think for themselves about what becomes really clear to them. And this is the power, this is almost where the magic happens in coaching. And I think this is where coaching is much more powerful than mentoring per se, because actually it gives the client or person or researcher, whoever it is you're working with, it gives them that agency back, and they realise then that they do have choice, and that they can then try mini experiments about, okay, so I'm going to maybe try saying no to this for a while and see how that feels. Because sometimes it's just a case of saying no once or twice, realising that there's actually no kickback against that, and the whole world isn't going to fall down, because there is a real fear within academia that if you start saying no, then there's going to be this giant kickback, there could be repercussions, your funders could get angry, or your managers could get angry. But actually, as people realise that when they make values-based choices, obviously they want to be collegial and part of a team, so they don't say no to all of the things that are perhaps mandatory. But they do say no to some stuff, and realising that you can say no without the kickback actually is a real positive feedback loop. So also the second thing I would say is that you were talking about, do people kick back at me? Well, no, because number one, it's a self-select group. I would never, nail somebody down and say, I think you need coaching, because actually it has to be something that somebody is seeking out. Therefore, they're already on that cycle of change. They're not at the pre-contemplation stage. They're already contemplating, things are tough, I need help, I'm going to go for coaching. So that's the first thing I would say, is that no, I don't get kickback, because number one, I'm not giving advice, and number two, people are coming to me for support. And usually I just help them to see where their own barriers are to change, and as they start to gently remove them, they begin to become empowered. And then actually what then starts to happen is, as they start to self-care more, they realise they can get more done in less time. So that's kind of the next part that starts to come through. And I have had some people who go, do you know what, I need to go part-time because I'm just not managing this. But then there are others who realise that they can say no to things, and then they actually have more time to get more done of the things that they prioritise. So yeah, I think it boils down to, the beauty of coaching is that it is client-focused, client-directed. It is a safe space for people to explore. I'm not going to go out and about and talk about to other academics or managers about the struggles and challenges that they've had and the barriers that they would like to remove. And also, they can experiment, they can try different things. Okay, that didn't work, then maybe come back to the next session and say, well, I would like to change this. And the great thing about coaching is anything is possible. You can experiment with all these different ways of running your day or your life, different ways of prioritising. Folk have come up with ingenious, creative ways of working that really are unique to them, and that's the beautiful thing about being a coach, is learning from others, seeing things that work for different people, and it's one size does not fit all. I think that's the struggle I have with, right, so the managers just have to make a 4-day work week. Yeah, great, that'll work for some, but it really won't work for others, so it's just about trying to find what works for every individual, and that's what a coach's role is.
Yeah, and if that is your preferred solution, then
Brilliant.
Work compressed hours and take your Fridays off if you want to.
Fantastic, that's great. And I would say is that self-care spent well in the way that works for you absolutely pays off in the short term and the long term, because of the increased well-being, increased work satisfaction, increased focus, creativity, clear-mindedness. You can get through your tasks faster than before, decisions are made more easily without as much guilt, and there's less stuckness and procrastination around sort of bigger writing tasks as well. That's what I would say. And also don't forget that coaching can help people to make a toolkit, because obviously life is not plain sailing, and in a profession like research and academia, challenges will come. And I think a coaching programme can leave people with a toolkit, with a greater understanding of themselves, so that they can see the signs perhaps of stress earlier and actually stave it off sooner than before. And they can say to themselves, aha, right, this happened before, this is how I felt, and these things worked before, so I can try this sooner. So it actually provides greater long-term resilience as well.
So listening to you, I guess there's 4 things maybe that come to mind as the key elements of the coaching relationship that can help academics. So the first is just creating a breath, creating a space. And I think that life just becomes so busy, and I think since we moved increasingly online, you can just fill every gap, and you're running between meetings and you're not even getting that, literally running between meetings, you are just switching from one screen to another. And just getting that space in your day where you're programming in an hour or however long it is once a week, or however often that you're seeing a coach, to just breathe and see the big picture and not just get kind of lost not able to see the wood for the trees kind of thing. I think the second thing then is the empowerment element. So great, I've got a bit of perspective. I can see, I've gone astray. I've said yes to a bunch of things I probably shouldn't have done, or whatever it is that you're kind of regretting having happened. You can see much more clearly. You're connecting with your values. And so the second thing is that you need to be empowered to actually act on those insights, because just the space alone is not enough. So now, okay, see what I need to do, and I've got that accountable relationship. There's also just that friendship, that trust. Here is someone who cares for me, who my success is their success. They are invested in me making this work, and they're going to do so in a compassionate way without beating me up if I don't quite manage to do it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Mark, actually, is that if you don't quite manage to do it, a good coach would see that as an opportunity to discover more about the barriers that you have, to change and to try in different things. So, I mean, all of those things are opportunities. There is no failure. There's just stuff that happens that you can learn from.
Yeah, you can totally reframe that. So, if the first 2 are about making space and then empowering, hand-holding, supporting, enabling someone to do something with those insights, I guess the second 2 things are about maintaining that and becoming more resilient. And so the first, I guess, is what is unique about coming to someone who is more of a health and well-being coach or a life coach, rather than just an executive coach, which is that those prompts to say, so what's happening elsewhere in your life at home, and thinking about your nutrition and how well you're actually resting and sleeping and things like that, and how when you start to get a grip on those kinds of things, that then feeds back positively to the self-care to create and maintain even more space and empower yourself even more to follow through on the insights that you get. And then over time, as you try more and more different things, you build up this toolkit. So, okay, I've tried this time, but it didn't work, but I've got a plan B and a plan C, and you become increasingly self-sufficient, so you no longer need a coach.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how it works. And then obviously, if you really get into a sticky position in the future, coaching has worked for you before. But 9 times out of 10, I would argue, I haven't actually been a coach long enough to get to this point, but I would probably argue that 9 times out of 10 people wouldn't need to go for another coaching programme. It would perhaps just be a top-up session, or to dig back down into the work that they did with their original coaching programme. Yeah, because the whole point of coaching is that you come out the other side changed, more resilient, with more tools for life, more insight into who you are as a person and a researcher, and really understanding your core values, barriers, what challenges you, what motivates you, and really to lean back into that. And I think that's where the problems have arisen, and obviously it has now been highlighted in post-pandemic working. Hybrid working is really challenging for academics. I mean, I've heard a lot of people talking about how hard that is. It works for some, but I think most are finding the balance very tricky indeed, and really quite stressful, with very little breathing space in between things. And I think this has highlighted a lot of stuff that was happening before, but it's just brought it all to the fore. And certainly people are realising more than ever how stressed they are and how much that's affecting their health and well-being, relationships at work and home. And I think my background as a doctor shows me that we aren't just one small kind of issue. We are whole beings, and if we self-care adequately most of the time, then we'll have resilience in health, we have resilience at work, we've got resilience as family members, and we kind of have to look at it holistically, because that we're not just a working machine. You know, eventually the batteries are going to run out if we look at ourselves like that. So I think the beauty of health coaching, health and wellness coaching, is that it can actually look at all of those areas in life.
Yeah, I mean, just listening to you, I think you can kind of catch just the enthusiasm that you have for this. I mean, I've watched you. You enjoyed being a doctor, but you love being a coach.
Yeah,
what is it that inspires you most about this?
I think as a doctor, I was an advice giver. I'll hold my hand up to say, as the profession, we give advice. People come, they ask for advice. It's very paternalistic, because in some ways it has to be. I do believe now that in a lot of ways it doesn't have to be so much like that, and definitely within the health arena people are recognising that. I know that there's a lot of work in primary care about trying to give patients back agency for their own health, but it's been tricky because over the last 75 years the NHS has created an environment where people come to receive advice, and that's hard. It's almost been a product of its own success, so it'll take a while to U-turn that. However, as a coach, I am now fully responsible for creating a safe environment in which I don't have responsibility for the other person's decision making and realisations. That is over to them, and I think that's what I love, is watching the client really find themselves, and that's a beautiful thing to be part of as a coach, because you can see them open up their wings and fly. When they came in thinking they had no choice at all, actually realising that in so many different arenas in life they actually have choice that they can apply to their life every day, can make a huge difference to people. And you know, seeing the caterpillar turn into the butterfly it's really a privilege. I really love it, and I learn something from every client that I work with, because every individual is unique, and it really is a privilege working with people, especially, you know, folk that I'm working with are by and large professionals with very demanding jobs, and you know, seeing people find a path through that incredibly challenging work environment that we now live in I really feel like I can do something of worth and value and give that time, space, ears to people who really do not get that on a day-to-day basis in any other way.
Yeah, and then they're on their own, they can do this themselves. They don't have to keep coming back to you or another professional to get more advice, because they're leading that whole process themselves.
They are, and I think empowering people to realise that an awful lot of the answers are within them, and they can trust themselves to do that. They can give themselves permission, and they can trust their own values, instincts, feelings, symptoms. Sometimes, you know, our symptoms that we have tell us so much about what we're doing and what decisions we could potentially change and make. And I think to be that vehicle for people to realise all of these truths is really quite a privileged thing to be doing.
Yeah, totally. What about PhD students, others listening that have limited income? People often ask me about that, and I've traditionally said, well, maybe you need to find yourself a mentor, someone who would be willing to do this for free. And yeah, there's some benefits of that, but I think compared to the kind of thing that you're talking about, it's just in a different ballpark altogether. What do you do if you want a coach but you can't really afford one?
Well, for me personally, and I'm sure other coaches out there would be the same or similar, it would for me, if you are on a limited income, I don't even just restrict this to students per se. I would work with you in terms of what finances you have available. Certainly for PhD students, I would really reduce my prices, because there is no reason why coaching should not be affordable and available to you at the beginning of your career, in order to build in some of these ways of thinking, mindsets and toolkits now, so that you don't end up stressed and burnt out later. And certainly I've done that for PhD students, and it's worked well for me and for them. And certainly I do think that other coaches, it's worth just asking. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is that they say, no, I'm sorry, I can't accommodate that for now, because there are a lot of us that will. And also, you might be interested to know that the Department of Health in England, now we're in Scotland, so I might get this wrong and it might warrant you, if you are in England, looking this up, but there are grants available and funding available through the Department of Health for people in health and wellness, and you can actually use this funding for health and wellness coaching. I know people that have done it, so that's worth a look, and we will put the link to that in the show notes as well.
Great, so you can check it out.
Because I have it, so you can check it out, and certainly I know one or two folk that have access to that, but it's not widely available knowledge, but it is there.
Yeah, and I guess finally then the other way to think about this is whether you might be able to get coaching through your university. And my experience is that there are very few universities that will offer one-to-one coaching. But you do kind of training type things, which is a kind of group coaching, and I'm aware that you're bringing in a new group coaching product. So tell us a little bit more about what you're doing in that space.
Yeah, so I have been running for the last nearly 18 months the Health Resilient Researcher course, which has been really successful and has had some fantastic feedback. People have really enjoyed it. However, I am aware that there is then very little coaching follow-up after that, and we have been approached by several universities asking if we do group coaching, and so at the moment I am just getting ready to launch my Resilient Researcher Coaching Programme, which is specifically designed for researchers, and it's much deeper and broader than the Health Resilient Researcher, which is why it's going to be called the Resilient Researcher, because it looks at the key barriers that academics can struggle with, that you have spoken about in the Productive Researcher. So that would be perfectionism, imposter syndrome and people-pleasing. We have a session on that. There's a session on finding and digging deeper into your values. We look at fostering better relationships at work and how you can deal with perhaps some of the challenges that arise within work relationships. We look at rest, sleep, nutrition. So this will be a 9-month programme with sessions once a month, looking at small groups to really try to start empowering groups of people. And my idea here is to get this health and wellness holistic approach to work-home balance really in the cultural narrative, which was an idea that sparked in me a fairly long time ago when I was proofreading the Impact Culture book, and it really struck me that actually the cultural narrative within groups could really be taken to the fore by coaching and by a coaching programme to really give folk permission to talk to each other about these things in meetings, in groups at work, have WhatsApp support groups for each other. So the idea is that if you take your department or research group or management committee through a coaching programme, then you have set up a support group there that's kind of generically evolved through the course of the programme that is then another resilience strategy into the future. And then the top-down modelling of coaching can filter through departments, hopefully. Really, the sort of rub-off, if you like, will hopefully come.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Absolutely. I can see the breadth and depth of help that people are going to be able to get for themselves, but also got a different thing where you get to not only discuss with you, but you're creating that safe space where people can bounce ideas off each other and help each other. And also, because you're doing that as part of a community of people working together, you've got that time in between sessions and then beyond the program for people to continue supporting each other and encouraging each other and helping each other through these things. And I think very often it is just about giving people permission to have those conversations and to create a more authentic culture where you can be your whole self in work and reach out in empathy to others to help them, so that we are far more compassionate. And for me, my hope is that by doing this, that you are going to be able to seed some really compassionate roots of cultures across the country where you do this, or around the world. Who knows who's going to go with this?
Yeah. Absolutely, but it's exciting times. We don't know where this is going to be received. However, I do feel as well, just something that you said there, Mark, the fact that each research department or group has got a kind of unique culture of its own, and we know this already from the training that we've done. Sometimes groups come to each of, my and your trainings, and they're really absolutely amazed that people within the same research group have actually been struggling with the same issues. And it's just it's like a breath of fresh air for people, realising that, oh my goodness, I'm not the only one struggling with these things. So I think that's where the germ of the idea was born for me, is recognising that openness, that authenticity is just so much more empowering, and it's also stress relieving as well, to bring your whole self to work and not just your work part. Can actually be a real stress reliever. And finding a group of like-minded people who want to approach work in a similar but not identical way can actually be really great, where you're kind of bouncing ideas off each other and learning from each other. And certainly as I'm trialling the coaching programme with a group at the moment, I'm finding exactly that, is that a lot of the time, I'm just sitting in the background gatekeeping, and they are really kind of empowering each other. And each session has been, at the end, folk have said how light they feel and how lovely it is to talk about these types of things with their colleagues, and the fact that it's just, they leave with a lightness of step.
And your task being creating the safe space where people can do that, and maintaining that safety and just shepherding people through that process that they ultimately take together.
That's it, exactly.
Well, hopefully we're going to have this launched, and my goal certainly is to have a link to the group coaching in the show notes. So let's aim for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm up for that, Mark, definitely.
Always good to have a deadline. So let's just say that. Go and have a look just now, and sure enough, you will see a link to the new group coaching from Fast Track. And you can find out more, or just set up a meeting to discuss that with Joyce if you're interested to find out more and think about how that might work in your context. Yeah. But I'll give you the last words, Joyce, in terms of any kind of final thoughts that you want to say. But for me, it's been really cool. I've talked to you about this. I always... I thought I knew exactly what coaching was, and clearly I didn't. I've learned a whole lot about what it is and isn't, but also its potential. And I think, I have a coach myself, an executive coach, and I find it incredibly empowering on a pretty much a bi-weekly basis, just to have that continuity, that sense of just staying on track and being accountable, but also that safe, compassionate place where, I can bring the failures and the things that didn't go well and reframe them as maybe not quite such a failure and learn from them. So my hope is that as you're listening to this, you're asking yourself that question: how, by hook or by crook, can I find someone who can enable me to get some of those kinds of benefits? So, Joyce, some final words for anyone thinking about this.
I think if you're thinking about getting a coach, if some of the things we've said today resonate with you, then just start exploring. I mean, there are loads of coaches working, executive coaches, life coaches, health coaches. There's a coach out there, I believe, for everybody, and don't settle for somebody that you don't connect well with. So most coaches will do a cost-free exploratory type call. I certainly do. You can have up to half an hour completely free of charge to connect with me, have a chat, see the sorts of things that you would like to do together, see if you like the coach, if there's a click with that person, and that's really important to remember, that you can always try a few different people, see what works. It can be in your department if you're lucky enough to have in-house coaches. If not, certainly try a private one. And then look out for group coaching as well, because that can be, if you're paying for that privately, that can be less costly than having an individual coach. So that's always worth thinking about. And certainly health and wellness coaching can be really integrative and inclusive if you also have concerns over your own health, stress levels, burnout, any underlying health conditions. But life coaching can be really powerful too. But all I would say is, if you're thinking about it, if this resonates with you, reach out and explore. And certainly I would never turn away anybody who would like a conversation. Whether you want to convert that to coaching or not, it doesn't matter. Reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about it.
Fantastic. Joyce, thank you once again. I know this won't be your last appearance, but it has been a pleasure having you back on the podcast.
It's been great. Thanks, Mark. And yeah, great. See you next time.